Hey everyone, Risarms. And I have absolutely no earthly idea why I just said that. You guys know where you're at, right? Jeez. Moving on. Over the years, folks, I've had a lot of different experiences. I had some situations that came up while I was in the Marines, and subsequently a couple since I've been out. A couple of different scenarios worked themselves out there. Had the opportunity to shoot a lot. I started shooting when I was about 8 years old, shot quite a bit before I went in, and of course once I got in the Marines I shot a whole lot. Fired a lot of different weaponry that most folks will never get a chance to fire, and I always think that's cool. And since then I've had a lot of different firearms training, and of course now I had some when I was in the military naturally, but I've had quite a bit since I've been out as well. Seen a lot of different ballistics tests through varying densities of ballistic gels, wood, wallboard, fabrics, polymers, you name it. On the short though, folks, basically what it's all done is it's come together to give me what I think is a pretty broad and solid foundation to make a well-informed decision about what my particular carry needs are. The modes in which I carry, the firearms, and naturally the calibers. You may have already guessed by the title, we're going to talk a little bit about the .40 Smith & Wesson and why I think that it is about the optimal carry around for me, even though it may not be for you. Now before I get too far into this, guys, I do want to say this. This is not going to be an anti-caliber video, okay? Lord knows we got enough of these anti-videos. They pop up like a pimple on prom night every few days, don't they? Oh, well, the .40 sucks, or XD suck, or 1911 suck, and blah, 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 blah. It's all a bunch of crap, and those three examples just simply isn't true. But this isn't going to be an anti-caliber video, guys, because I'm not anti-any caliber, okay? I don't have a problem with the 9mm. I don't have a problem with the .45. I like both of those equally well. But given a choice, I prefer the .40, and I'm going to tell you why. But before I do, I want to tell you a little bit about where the .40 came from. It basically was developed mostly because of the events that took place in the spring of 1986. That's when two career criminals, shall we say, William Maddox and Michael Platt, came head-to-head with about 8 of our FBI agents and got into a 5-minute firefight, which has since become known as the Dade County Shootout. And while there were a couple of shotguns on site, I think only one shotgun that the FBI had was actually utilized because the other two were not accessible because of the way the events unfolded. And Maddox was taken out pretty early in the fight. Michael Platt still managed to kill 2 of our FBI agents, Agent Grogan and Agent Dove, and injured 5 others. In fact, there's only one that escaped any injury at all. And in the ensuing investigation, guys, it was determined that our guys were pretty grossly underarmed, and they were outgunned. So they started looking for a more powerful handgun round. Now they pretty much dismissed the revolver rounds because I think they wanted to stay with the automatic pistol because of the convenience of just putting another magazine in for a reload. Plus, it would give a few more round capacity than the revolvers being held down to 6. So they kind of zeroed in on the 10mm. And while they liked the ballistics of it real well, it was a very snappy round. And they felt that during the testing that it might not be comfortable for some of their guys to shoot. So they started messing around with the load a little bit and came up with what they called a 10mm light. And they liked it pretty well. It gave very, very close to the same ballistics, but it did lighten the recoil a little bit. And then they wanted the frame size to be about the same size as the 9mm, so that's pretty much, to make a long story short, that's when Smith & Wesson jumped in along with Winchester, and they took the 10mm, whacked a little bit off the casing, dropped the load back in it, put the projectile on it, and voila, the .40 Smith & Wesson was born. And it did pretty much what they wanted it to do. It was more powerful than the 9mm and seemed to be a lot more efficient. It gave ballistics that were very, very similar to the .45 ACP. I remember this shoot because in 1986 I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and we were finishing up the changeover at that time from the 1911 to the M9 Beretta service pistol. And I remember there were guys, especially a lot of the older guys, that were adamantly against that. They were not happy about that at all, and they used this as an example. They're like, see there, if they'd had .45s, it'd been over sooner, and you know, our guys would still be alive. We could have stopped it, wouldn't have gone on that long, and so forth and so on. Now, if they had had 10 millimeters instead of 9s or 40s or 45s, wouldn't it have been over sooner? Well, guys, that's really just pure speculation, but I'd say logically, the percentage of that happening is a pretty safe bet. But I'll go one further for you. I'll go one even further for you. The technology around ammunition in the last 10 to 15 years, let alone the last 27 when this shoot took place, has increased the efficiency and effectiveness of it astronomically, okay? I will say this, if they had had today's ammunition back in 1986, I don't even think the 40 Smith & Wesson would exist. So there you go. But they didn't have it. They did develop it. It is here, and it is a very efficient, effective, and formidable round. Now, the increase in technology around it, guys, since 1990, the gap between the 9mm and the 40 has definitely closed, okay? 9mm, like I said, I have no issue with a 9. I would have no problem carrying a 9 to this day. But being that I do have a choice, I prefer the 40. And the reason I prefer the 40 is this. It is more powerful than the 9. As minimal as it may be, it is. The round is bigger. It creates a bigger hole. Self-defense rounds, okay, and I like 165 grain self-defense. I prefer PDX-1s or actually Federal HSTs, either one. When they open up, the bullet diameter is bigger than the same 9mm manufacturer and say 147 grain. The bullet's bigger. It creates more tissue damage. Is it minimal? Yes. Is it close? Is it similar? Yes. But it is still bigger, and it might be just enough to give you an advantage over not such a perfect shot placement. Now, a lot of people will sit there and tell you that a lot of proponents of the 9 will sit there and tell you, well, you know, it's all shot placement, it's all shot placement, it's all shot placement. All you need is a 9 or a 45. Well, if they're all similar, why do you need the 45? Okay, that's my point there. If it's, I'm not debating that shot placement is not important. It is indeed. But guys, have you ever seen 48 Hours? And there's my train. Hey, see, I knew she'd show up. Never fails. Train's here. Blow your whistle. But remember 48 Hours? Toward the end of the movie, Reggie Hammond breaks into Billy Bear's bedroom, and all of a sudden he realizes where he's at and what he's doing. Okay? Pops in there and he's like, "Freeze, Billy." Folks, I've said this on another video and I'll say it again. If you have never had to draw down on another human being, you don't know how you're going to react. And I can tell you from experience, folks, you don't want to do it. You don't want to be there. Now, I'm not talking about being out on the field of combat in the military. I've been there, done that too. Totally different situation. And while I am a huge advocate of going through pistol defense classes and pistol fighting classes and force-on-force training, absolutely, get as much of that as you can. If you don't think you can get one in anyway. I don't care. And you're not going to be able to learn by watching a video on it. You can get some ideas what it's like, but you need to go. It will help you tremendously. But that's all it'll do is help you. I don't care what kind of class you go through. The one I went through, they were yelling and screaming at you, putting as much stress on you as possible. And you were nervous. You know, you got the butterflies in your stomach, but still in the back of your head, you were like, this isn't real. Until you've had to do it in real life, you don't know how you're going to react. So you may be putting 3-inch circles at 30 feet at a paper target or a steel target downrange. When you draw down on a real human being to defend your life, it could go from this to that in a heartbeat and anywhere in between. So I'm not one that says you need to rely on your shot placement. You need all the help you can get. In my opinion, you may feel differently, and if you do, that's fine. That's fine. Everybody has to make that decision for themselves. But that's the reason I like the 40. I will gladly give up 1 or 2 rounds in a magazine because I always carry a spare mag to give the extra peace of mind that saying if I don't hit this exactly in the right spot, it might create enough damage to get me by. Now, opponents to the 40 will say, well, it's bullshit. Go right ahead. Say it all you want. It's your decision. Okay? Do what you want with it. But I prefer the 40 because of that. Okay? Now, I'm not even going to talk about penetration because the bottom line is 165 grain 40 self-defense generally penetrates better than 147 grain 9mm self-defense. Can you find a 9mm that will penetrate further than a 40? Absolutely, you can. You can look around for it and find it, but as a general rule, the 40 has a better penetrating ability. As far as self-defense goes, that's what we're talking about. You need to, with these 3 rounds, whether it be the 9, the 40, or the 45, you definitely need to be using defensive ammo. If you're using a 380 or a 32, I personally wouldn't use it because they don't have the penetrating ability of these big boys here, but you know, that's your call as well. But anyway, guys, that's the reason I like the 40. I prefer the 40 because it might just give you an advantage, okay? If you're carrying the 9, do I think you're underarmed? Nope. Don't think any less of you either. I think you're armed fine. And I have no problem with a 9 either. But being that I do have a choice, I prefer the 40 for those reasons. And that's it. Maybe you think differently than I do. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for this time. We are going to talk about a couple of pistols next time around, though. And I'm testing this M&P out for a friend of mine. Really liking the way this thing shoots. So talk about it next time. Later.